The morning sun rose over New Eden like it had for the past 47 years since humans first landed on this world. Jake Morrison stood at the window of the orbital defense station, watching the golden light spread across the vast green plains. Below, 12 million people called this place home now, and most of them had never seen Earth with their own eyes. This was their world, their life, their future. Jake had been born here 32 years ago. His parents came on the third wave of settlers when he was just a baby. Now he commanded the defense platform that kept watch over the planet. It was not a hard job most days. The biggest threats were usually space rocks or broken satellites. The alien races they traded with were peaceful folk who brought useful things and took away food and metals. Down on the planet's surface, Dr. Lisa Carter was already at work in her research lab. She studied the soil and plants of New Eden, trying to make them grow better and feed more people. Lisa had come from Earth 15 years ago as a young scientist. She loved this world and the work she did here. Her team had just discovered a new way to grow wheat that could feed twice as many families with the same amount of land. The colony had grown beyond what anyone expected. What started as a few thousand brave pioneers had become a thriving world. Cities dotted the landscape with tall buildings and busy streets. Farms stretched to the horizon, growing food that fed not just New Eden but several other human colonies, too. The mines deep underground pulled out rare metals that Earth needed for building starships. Trade ships came and went from the orbital docks every day. The Zentari brought medical supplies and took grain. The Vauclon merchants exchanged advanced tools for meat and vegetables. Even the quiet Helen people sometimes visited to trade their beautiful crystals for Earth music and art. Jake had made friends with many of the alien traders over the years. They were good people who just wanted to make honest livings like anyone else. Children played in the parks of New Eden cities. Schools taught them about Earth history and also about their new home. Many of these kids had never been off planet and probably never would. This was their universe, their reality. They dreamed of becoming farmers or miners or scientists or maybe even starship pilots like their grandparents had been. Lisa often walked through the main city of Hope Valley during her lunch breaks. She watched families going about their daily lives, people working and laughing and building something beautiful together. The architecture mixed Earth designs with local materials, creating something unique that belonged to this world. Gardens grew alien flowers alongside Earth roses. It was a symbol of how humans could adapt and thrive anywhere they went. The defense station where Jake worked was more for show than anything else. New Eden had a few armed patrol ships and some basic shield generators, but nothing serious. Why? Would they need heavy weapons? The galaxy was peaceful. The major alien powers had signed trade agreements with Earth decades ago. Wars were things from the old history books, not something modern civilizations did anymore. Jake's morning routine included checking the sensor readings from the edge of the star system. Every day the same pattern showed up on his screens. Merchant, ships following approved flight paths. Occasional survey vessels from various species doing scientific research. Deep space was quiet and orderly, just the way it should be. But this morning something was different. Jake noticed unusual readings, near the edge of sensor range. At first he thought it might be equipment problems. He ran diagnostics on all his systems. Everything checked out fine. The readings were real. Something big was coming toward New Eden. Lisa received Jake's emergency call while she was examining plant samples under her microscope. His voice sounded worried, which was strange because Jake never worried about anything. He told her to come up to the defense station right away. She had security clearance to access the military areas when needed. Something in his tone made her drop everything and catch the next shuttle up to orbit. When Lisa arrived at the command center, Jake showed her the sensor displays. Dozens of ships were approaching fast from deep space. They were still too far away to identify clearly, but they were definitely not following normal trade routes or broadcasting friendly signals. The formation looked military to Lisa's eyes, though she was no expert on such things. Jake tried to contact the approaching fleet on all standard channels. No response came back. He sent automated greetings in 7 different alien languages. Still nothing. The ships just kept coming straight toward New Eden without any communication at all. This broke every protocol for entering an inhabited star system. Lisa suggested they contact Earth immediately. The quantum relay could send a message to the home system in about 18 days. Jake agreed and began composing an urgent report. Something was very wrong here, and Earth needed to know about it. But as he worked on the message, the approaching ship suddenly accelerated. They would reach New Eden in just a few hours now. The unknown fleet finally came into clear sensor range, and what Jake saw made his blood turn cold. These were warships unlike anything in the databases. Massive vessels bristling with weapons and armor. Their design was completely alien but obviously built for destruction. Whoever these people were, they had not come to New Eden for trade or peaceful contact. Jake immediately activated the colony's emergency alert system. Sirens began wailing in every city and town across the planet. People looked up at the sky, with confusion and growing fear. Most had never heard that sound before. The children did not understand what it meant, but their parents remembered the drills from years past. Lisa helped Jake try to contact the approaching fleet one more time. She suggested offering them supplies or assistance. Maybe they were refugees, fleeing some distant war. Maybe they just needed fuel or food. But deep down, both Jake and Lisa knew better. These ships had not traveled across the galaxy to ask for help. The first shots came without any warning at all. Brilliant beams of energy lanced down from the fleet above and struck New Eden's small defense platforms. Jake's station shook as explosions bloomed around them. The shields held for a few seconds, then failed completely. More shots followed, targeting the orbital docks and communication arrays. Jake managed to send one final message toward Earth before his transmitter was destroyed. The words were simple, but carried the weight of 12 million lives. They came without warning. 12 million souls. Remember us. Then the defense station exploded around them, and Jake Morrison's last thought was of the children playing in Hope Valley's parks below. 18 days after New Eden fell silent, the quantum relay station on Luna picked up Jake Morrison's final transmission. The message was short but devastating. Technical Officer Claire Williams was working the night shift when the signal came through. She played it 3 times before she fully understood what she was hearing. Then she immediately contacted Earth Defense Command. Admiral Frank Cooper was eating breakfast with his wife when the emergency call came through. He had served in the Terran Space Navy for 38 years, but nothing had prepared him for this news. 12 million people dead. An entire colony world destroyed by unknown attackers. It was the worst disaster in human history since the Great War ended over a century ago. President Victoria Hayes received the briefing at dawn. She sat in her office reading the report again and again, trying to make sense of it. Humanity had been exploring and colonizing space for almost 2 centuries. They had met dozens of alien species and established peaceful relations with all of them. Wars were things that happened in the distant past, not in the modern galaxy. The president called an emergency meeting of the Earth Defense Council. Representatives from every human colony world attended by Quantum Link. The news hit them like a physical blow. Many of these people had friends or family on New Eden. Some had visited there for business or vacation. Now it was gone, wiped out by enemies they had never known existed. Admiral Cooper presented what little information they had. The attacking fleet appeared suddenly without any warning. They used advanced weapons technology that overwhelmed New Eden's basic defenses in hours. No demands were made, no communication attempted. It was pure genocide carried out with cold efficiency. Dr. Alex Turner sat quietly in the corner during most of the meeting. He directed the Advanced Weapons Research Division, a classified program that most council members only knew by name. When the president asked for options, Alex cleared his throat and spoke carefully about Project Nemesis. For 20 years, Alex's team had been developing weapons that Earth hoped never to use. Antimatter warheads that could crack planets, particle beams that cut through any known material, shield generators that could protect ships from almost anything. The technology existed, but it had been locked away because no one wanted to start an arms race with their alien neighbors. The council debated through the night. Some members argued for caution and diplomacy. Maybe this was a misunderstanding that could be resolved peacefully. Others demanded immediate military action. How could humanity survive in a hostile galaxy if they did not fight back against unprovoked attacks? President Hayes listened to all viewpoints before making her decision. Earth would mobilize for war. Every shipyard in the solar system would begin building warships. The deep space exploration vessels would be recalled and converted for military use. Most importantly, Project Nemesis would finally see the light of day. Captain Ryan Bell commanded a deep space survey ship when the recall order reached him. He was mapping star systems near the edge of human space, looking for new worlds to colonize. The message from Earth Defense Command was brief: return immediately for reassignment to military duty. Ryan had been in the Navy for 15 years, but he had never seen actual combat. That was about to change. The journey back to Earth took Ryan 12 days. During that time, he studied every bit of information available about the attack on New Eden. The enemy ships were clearly advanced, but their tactics seemed straightforward. They relied on overwhelming firepower rather than clever strategy. That might be something human forces could exploit. When Ryan reached Earth orbit, he was amazed by what he saw. The peaceful shipyards had transformed into massive military factories. Hundreds of workers labored around the clock building weapons and armor. Ships that had been designed for exploration were being fitted with the most advanced military equipment humanity had ever created. Admiral Cooper personally briefed Ryan on his new assignment. He would command the TSS Retribution, a completely new type of warship built specifically to hunt down and destroy the enemy fleet. The ship incorporated all of Project Nemesis technology into a single devastating platform. It was humanity's answer to the attack on New Eden. Lieutenant Nina Foster joined Ryan's crew as weapons officer. She had studied military history and tactics at the Earth Naval Academy. But like most officers of her generation, she had never expected to use that knowledge in actual warfare. Nina understood the theory of space combat, but theory and reality were very different things. Chief Engineer Marcus Webb had worked on civilian starships his entire career. He knew more about spacecraft systems than almost anyone alive. When Dr. Turner's people explained the Nemesis technology to him, Marcus was both fascinated and terrified. The power contained in these weapons could either save humanity or destroy it completely. The TSS Retribution was ready for launch 6 weeks after the fall of New Eden. The ship looked different from anything in human space. Where exploration, vessels were sleek and beautiful, the Retribution was angular and aggressive. Every line of its hull spoke of violence and destruction. It was built for one purpose: killing the enemies of humanity. Ryan's crew trained constantly during the voyage to the edge of human space. They practiced combat maneuvers and weapons drills until they could operate the ship blindfolded. Everyone understood that they might have only one chance to prove that humanity would not be destroyed without a fight. Intelligence reports suggested that the enemy fleet was moving through human space systematically, destroying colonies one by one. They had hit 3 more settlements after New Eden, always using the same brutal tactics. Millions more humans were dead, and the attackers showed no signs of stopping their campaign of genocide. The name of humanity's enemies finally became known through intercepted alien communications. They called themselves the Hegemony of Keth, a militaristic empire that considered humans to be primitive vermin, cluttering up civilized space. Their supreme overlord had apparently decided that the human expansion needed to end permanently. Ryan read the intelligence reports with growing anger. The Keth spoke of humans like they were insects to be exterminated. They boasted about the ease of destroying human colonies and mocked the weakness of Earth's defenses. According to their broadcasts, humanity was nothing but target practice for their superior military forces. But the Keth had made one critical mistake in their assessment of human nature. They thought that destroying a few colonies would terrify Earth into surrender. Instead, their attacks had awakened something that had slept in humanity for over a century. The peaceful traders and explorers were remembering that their ancestors had been warriors who conquered their entire home world through superior tactics and unbreakable will. Dr. Turner's final briefing to Captain Bell was simple and direct. The Retribution carried enough firepower to destroy fleets 10 times its size. The antimatter torpedoes could penetrate any known shield technology. The particle beam arrays could cut enemy ships in half from incredible distances. But the most important weapon aboard the ship was the crew's determination to avenge New Eden. As the TSS Retribution left Earth's solar system, President Hayes sent a message to every human colony and space station. Earth had not forgotten the 12 million dead on New Eden. Justice would be served no matter what the cost. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's capacity for both creation and destruction knew no limits. Ryan Bell stood on his bridge, watching the stars ahead. Somewhere out there, the Keith fleet was hunting for more human colonies to destroy. They expected to find helpless victims cowering before their superior technology. Instead, they were about to encounter Earth's wrath, made manifest in steel and fire. The war for humanity's survival had begun. The TSS Retribution dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Vega system 3 months after leaving Earth. Captain Ryan Bell stood on his bridge studying the tactical display with grim satisfaction. Intelligence had been correct about the Keth fleet's location. 50 massive warships hung in space near Vega's 4th planet, preparing for another assault on human civilians. The planet below was called Haven by its 2 million human inhabitants. It was a mining colony that supplied rare metals to Earth's shipyards. Ryan could see the colony's small defense platforms scattered around the orbital space, pathetically inadequate against the force assembled to destroy them. The Keth had learned nothing from their previous easy victories. Lieutenant Nina Foster worked frantically at her weapons console, bringing the Retribution systems online. The antimatter torpedoes were loaded and ready. The particle beam arrays hummed with barely contained energy. Every weapon Dr. Turner's team had created was armed and targeted at the enemy fleet ahead. Chief Engineer Marcus Webb monitored his engines from the engineering deck. The Nemesis drive system was performing perfectly, giving the Retribution speed and power that no other human ship had ever possessed. Marcus had installed every defensive system known to human science. If this ship could not stand against the Keth, then nothing could. War Master Thekval commanded the Keth fleet from his massive flagship. He was reviewing plans for the assault on Haven when his sensors detected the approaching human vessel. At first, he assumed it was a supply ship trying to evacuate the colony. When his tactical officer reported that it was actually approaching their fleet, Thekval laughed with genuine amusement. The Keth had destroyed 4 human colonies without losing a single ship. These primitive beings had no military worth mentioning. Their exploration vessels carried only basic weapons meant for clearing space debris. The idea that one small human ship might challenge his entire fleet was beyond ridiculous. Thekval ordered his communications officer to contact the approaching vessel. He would offer the humans a chance to surrender before destroying them. It would be amusing to hear them beg for mercy before he added another victory to his growing list of achievements. Captain Bell received the Keth transmission on his bridge. The alien voice spoke perfect English, obviously translated by their computers. The words were arrogant and dismissive, offering humanity one chance to submit to Keth authority before facing total extinction. Ryan listened to the entire message without expression. When the transmission ended, Ryan activated his own communications array. His response was broadcast on all frequencies so that every ship in both fleets could hear it clearly. His voice was calm and steady, but underneath lay a fury that had been building for 3 long months. This is Captain Ryan Bell of the Terran Space Navy. You murdered 12 million innocent people on New Eden. You have continued this genocide across 4 worlds, killing families and children who never threatened you. There will be no surrender. There will be no mercy. There will only be justice. The Keth fleet responded exactly as Ryan had hoped they would. 50 ships turned to face his single vessel with weapons charging. They formed a classic battle formation designed to overwhelm any opponent through concentrated firepower. It was the same tactic they had used successfully against every human colony. Thekval gave the order to attack with supreme confidence. His ships unleashed a devastating barrage of energy weapons that should have vaporized the human vessel instantly. Instead, the beams struck an impossible barrier of light that surrounded the Retribution like a second skin. The Nemesis shields held firm against everything the Keth could throw at them. Lieutenant Foster waited until the enemy barrage ended before opening fire. The Retribution's first torpedo struck the Keth flagship's forward section and simply vanished it from existence. Antimatter met matter in a reaction that released more energy than a small star. The massive warship broke apart in a chain of secondary explosions that lit up the void. The Keth fleet reacted with shock and confusion. No weapon they knew could penetrate their shields so completely. No human technology should have been capable of such destruction. War Master Thekval was dead before he could process what had happened to his supposedly invincible flagship. Captain Bell did not give the enemy time to recover from their surprise. The Retribution moved through the Keth formation like a predator among prey. Nina's targeting was flawless, sending antimatter death into ship after ship. Marcus pushed the engines beyond their design limits, giving Ryan the speed he needed to stay ahead of the enemy's desperate attempts to coordinate their response. The battle became a systematic execution rather than a fair fight. Keth ships exploded one after another as the Retribution's weapons found their marks. Their return fire could not penetrate the human ship's defenses. Advanced alien technology that had conquered dozens of worlds proved useless against Earth's scientific fury. Some Keth captains tried to ram the Retribution when their weapons failed. Ryan simply accelerated past them and let Nina destroy them from behind. Others attempted to flee the system, but the human ship was faster than anything they had. One by one, every enemy vessel was reduced to expanding clouds of superheated gas. The engagement lasted exactly 3 hours and 17 minutes. When it ended, 50 Keth warships had been reduced to debris scattered across the Vega system. The TSS Retribution hung motionless in space without a scratch on its hull. Captain Bell surveyed the destruction with grim satisfaction before opening communications with Haven Colony. The colonists on the planet below had watched the battle through their telescopes and orbital sensors. They had expected to die that day, just like their friends and families on New Eden. Instead, they had witnessed the complete annihilation of humanity's enemies by a single Earth warship. The impossible had become reality. Ryan recorded a message that would be transmitted throughout known space via quantum relay. The recording showed the battle footage alongside his words. Every alien species would see what happened when genocide was committed against human civilians. The message was simple but carried the weight of Earth's newfound military might. Let it be known throughout the galaxy that those who commit genocide against humanity will face extinction. We are no longer the peaceful traitors you once knew. We are the children of Earth and we protect our own. Choose your actions wisely, for there will be no second chances. The news of the Keth fleet's destruction spread through galactic civilization like wildfire. Species that had known humans only as explorers and merchants suddenly realized they had been sharing space with sleeping giants. The peaceful facade had hidden a capacity for warfare that surpassed anything the galaxy had seen. Several alien governments immediately began reviewing their policies toward human colonies. Trade agreements were renewed hastily. Diplomatic missions that had been delayed for years were suddenly given highest priority. Nobody wanted to risk becoming the next target of Earth's demonstrated wrath. The Zentari ambassador to Earth requested an emergency meeting with President Hayes. His people had traded with humans for decades and considered them friends. Now he wanted to ensure that friendship remained strong in these changing times. Other species sent similar messages, all seeking to maintain peaceful relations with humanity. But on the Keth homeworld, news of Thekval's defeat was received very differently. Supreme Overlord Kreshmore had built his empire on the principle that superior technology and ruthless aggression would always triumph over inferior species. The destruction of his best fleet by primitive humans challenged everything he believed about the natural order of the galaxy. Kreshmore ordered the mobilization of every warship in the hegemony. If one human vessel could destroy 50 Keth ships, then he would send 500. If that was not enough, he would send 5,000. The humans had won one battle, but the war for galactic supremacy was far from over. Captain Bell received new orders from Earth Defense Command as the Retribution headed home for resupply. Admiral Cooper's message was brief but filled with ominous implications. The Keth were preparing for total war against humanity. Every colony world was at risk. The battle at Vega had been only the beginning of a conflict that would determine whether humans survived as a species. Ryan looked out at the stars ahead and wondered what his people had unleashed. Earth's wrath had reached the stars and proven its power against those who threatened innocent lives. But the galaxy was vast, and humanity was still vastly outnumbered by their enemies. The next phase of the war would test whether courage and determination could overcome impossible odds. News of the Vega battle reached the Keth homeworld 6 days after Captain Bell's victory. Supreme Overlord Creshmore stood in his war chamber surrounded by holographic displays showing the complete destruction of Thekval's fleet. The recordings had been transmitted by fleeing merchant vessels who witnessed the impossible defeat of 50 warships by a single human vessel. Creshmore's advisors cowered as their leader's rage filled the chamber. The Supreme Overlord had built the hegemony through centuries of conquest, crushing dozens of species beneath his iron rule. No inferior race had ever dared to strike back at Keth forces, let alone destroy an entire fleet. The humans had violated the natural order of the galaxy. General Vex Khan, the hegemony's military commander, struggled to explain how primitive human technology could penetrate Keth shields. Their intelligence reports claimed that Earth barely possessed faster-than-light travel. Their weapons were supposed to be centuries behind Keth standards. Yet somehow one ship had accomplished what should have been impossible. Creshmore silenced his advisors with a gesture and began issuing orders. Every fleet in the hegemony would be recalled immediately. Border patrols, conquest expeditions, and garrison forces from across their empire would converge on Keth space. The humans had demonstrated their capacity for destruction, but they were still vastly outnumbered. The Supreme Overlord's plan was simple and brutal. A massive armada would strike directly at Earth itself, destroying humanity's homeworld before they could build more weapons like the one that had massacred Thekval's ships. Without Earth to coordinate their defense, the scattered human colonies would fall easily to Keth superiority. Meanwhile, Earth had not been idle since the Retribution's victory. Admiral Cooper stood in the orbital shipyards above Luna, watching 200 warships take shape in the construction bays. Operation Righteous Fury was the largest military buildup in human history, transforming Earth's peaceful industrial capacity into an engine of war. Dr. Turner's research teams worked around the clock, developing even more devastating weapons than those carried by the Retribution. Quantum disruptor bombs that could destabilize entire star systems were being loaded onto specially designed attack ships. Particle cannons capable of cutting through planetary crusts were mounted on heavy cruisers. President Hayes approved the most controversial aspect of Admiral Cooper's plan during a closed session of the Defense Council. Rather than wait for the Keth to attack Earth, humanity would strike first. Intelligence suggested that the enemy was massing their fleets for a decisive assault on the home system. Earth would meet them halfway. Captain Amy Rodriguez received command of the flagship TSS Vengeance, the most powerful warship ever built by human hands. She had served under Admiral Cooper for 15 years and understood the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. 200 ships and their crews would follow her into battle against impossible odds. Captain Bell's TSS Retribution had been upgraded with the latest weapons technology and would lead one of the assault groups. His crew had gained valuable combat experience at Vega, making them the most battle-tested unit in the human fleet. Nina Foster had been promoted to commander and would coordinate the squadron's tactical operations. The human fleet divided into multiple task forces before leaving Earth's solar system. Each group would strike different Keth military installations simultaneously, preventing the enemy from concentrating their defenses. It was a risky strategy that relied on speed and surprise to overcome superior numbers. Captain Rodriguez's main force targeted the Keith shipyards in the Althar system, where intelligence reported massive construction projects underway. Destroying these facilities would cripple the enemy's ability to replace their losses. The mission required her ships to penetrate deep into hostile territory without support. Captain Bell led his squadron against Keth supply depots in the Nexor cluster. These bases provided fuel and ammunition for the enemy fleets gathering near their homeworld. Eliminating them would strand thousands of Keth warships without the resources needed for their planned assault on Earth. Commander Helen Grant commanded the 3rd Task Force, assigned to strike Keth communication hubs throughout their empire. Cutting these links would blind the enemy command structure and prevent coordination between their scattered forces. Her ships carried specialized equipment designed to destroy quantum relay stations. The attacks began simultaneously across 17 star systems. Human ships dropped out of hyperspace without warning and immediately opened fire on their targets. The Keth defenders were caught completely off guard by the ferocity and coordination of the assault. At the Althar shipyards, Captain Rodriguez's fleet encountered massive orbital construction platforms protected by defense satellites and patrol squadrons. The TSS Vengeance led the charge through the enemy formations, its antimatter torpedoes reducing shipyard after shipyard to expanding fireballs of molten metal. The Keth had never faced human tactics before and struggled to respond to attacks that seemed to ignore all accepted rules of civilized warfare. Human ships used kamikaze runs against critical targets, sacrificing themselves to ensure mission success. Asteroid bombardments turned entire military bases into clouds of radioactive dust. Commander Foster's tactical innovations proved especially effective against Keth fleet formations. She had studied their battle recordings and identified weaknesses in their standard defensive patterns. Her targeting solutions allowed human ships to strike multiple enemies simultaneously with devastating precision. The psychological impact of human warfare was as devastating as their physical weapons. Keth commanders who had spent centuries crushing weaker species suddenly found themselves facing opponents who fought with suicidal determination. Human crews pressed attacks even when their ships were crippled, using their vessels as guided missiles. Captain Bell's assault on the Nexor supply depots achieved complete success within 18 hours. Every fuel storage facility and ammunition dump in the cluster was destroyed, leaving thousands of Keth ships stranded without the resources needed for combat operations. The economic damage would cripple their war effort for years. Commander Grant's communication raids severed the links between Keth military commands across half their empire. Enemy fleets that had been moving in coordination suddenly found themselves isolated and unable to respond to changing battle conditions. The carefully planned assault on Earth began falling apart before it could begin. Supreme Overlord Creshmore watched his empire's military infrastructure crumble under sustained human attacks. Reports poured in from across Keth space describing unprecedented destruction and impossible human victories. His advisors begged him to negotiate with Earth before the situation became completely hopeless. But Creshmore refused to show weakness to what he still considered an inferior species. If conventional tactics could not defeat the humans, then he would resort to weapons that violated every galactic treaty. Deep in the most secure vaults of the Keth homeworld lay a device capable of destroying Earth's biosphere completely. The planet killer had been built centuries ago as insurance against any threat to Keth supremacy. It could cross interstellar distances in days and release enough toxic energy to sterilize any world. The weapon's use would probably trigger galactic war, but Creshmore no longer cared about consequences. Admiral Cooper received intelligence about the planet killer's launch through alien sources sympathetic to humanity. The weapon was already accelerating toward the Sol system and would arrive in less than a week. Earth's defenses were powerful, but nothing could stop a device designed to kill entire worlds. Captain Rodriguez volunteered to intercept the weapon with her task force, even though it meant abandoning their current mission. The TSS Vengeance and its escort ships changed course immediately, racing to reach the planet killer before it could threaten Earth. Every person aboard understood they were probably flying to their deaths. The final confrontation occurred in deep space between the Keth homeworld and Sol system. Captain Rodriguez's fleet engaged the planet killer's escort squadrons in a desperate battle that would determine humanity's survival. The Vengeance absorbed incredible damage while fighting through to the weapon itself. In the end, Rodriguez made the ultimate sacrifice that military leaders had been making throughout human history. The TSS Vengeance rammed the planet killer at maximum velocity, both ships vanishing in an explosion that could be seen from several light-years away. Earth was saved, but at a cost that would be remembered forever. The news of Rodriguez's sacrifice reached Earth just as Admiral Cooper was preparing the final assault on the Keth homeworld. Her heroism had bought humanity the time needed to end this war permanently. The galaxy would learn that those who threatened innocent human lives faced not just military defeat but complete destruction. Admiral Frank Cooper stood on the bridge of the massive dreadnought TSS Terra's Wrath as it dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Keth home system. Behind him stretched the largest battle fleet humanity had ever assembled. 300 warships armed with the most devastating weapons Earth scientists could create. The time for half measures had ended. The Keth homeworld of Cathara hung before them like a dark jewel, surrounded by the orbital fortresses and defense platforms that had protected their civilization for 1,000 years. Hundreds of enemy warships patrolled the system's approaches, ready to die defending their supreme overlord in the heart of their empire. Captain Bell's TSS Retribution took position at the fleet's spearhead, its crew eager for revenge after witnessing Captain Rodriguez's heroic sacrifice. Commander Foster coordinated the targeting solutions that would guide humanity's wrath against those who had chosen genocide over coexistence. Chief Webb pushed his engines to maximum power, ready to carry Earth's fury into the enemy's stronghold. Supreme. Overlord Creshmore received reports of the human fleet's arrival with growing desperation. His advisors had been begging him to negotiate ever since the planet killer's destruction, but his pride would not allow him to show weakness before inferior beings. If the Keth Empire was destined to fall, it would die fighting rather than surrender. The battle began with a massive exchange of long-range fire that lit up the void between the two fleets. Keth energy weapons struck human shields in brilliant displays of color and force. Earth's antimatter torpedoes answered with explosions that outshone the system's sun. The scale of destruction dwarfed every previous space battle in galactic history. Admiral Cooper's strategy was as brutal as it was effective. Rather than engage the enemy fleet directly, he ordered widespread attacks on Cathara's orbital infrastructure. Shipyards, space stations, and defense platforms were systematically destroyed by human weapons that seemed to ignore distance and defensive barriers. The Keth defenders fought with desperate courage, knowing that defeat meant the end of everything they had built across centuries of conquest. Their ships threw themselves at the human formation in suicidal attacks that accomplished little beyond adding more debris to the expanding battlefield. Captain Bell led a squadron of fast attack ships through the enemy's defensive perimeter, striking directly at the military command centers orbiting Cathara. His targeting was precise and merciless, eliminating the coordination nodes that allowed Keth forces to function as a unified fighting force. Commander Foster's innovative tactics continued to prove their worth against alien opponents who could not adapt to human methods of warfare. She used feint attacks and false retreats to draw enemy ships into carefully prepared kill zones, where concentrated firepower could destroy entire squadrons simultaneously. The orbital battle raged for 16 hours before the last Keth defense platform fell silent. Cathara's protective fleet had been reduced to expanding clouds of wreckage that would orbit the planet for centuries to come. The way was clear for the final phase of humanity's vengeance. Admiral Cooper opened communications with the planet below, broadcasting on all frequencies so that every inhabitant of Cathara could hear his words. His message was simple and final, carrying the weight of 12 million dead humans who would never see justice except through the complete destruction of their killers. This is Admiral Frank Cooper of the Terran Space Navy. Your forces have committed genocide against innocent human civilians across multiple worlds. Your Supreme Overlord has rejected every opportunity for peaceful resolution. The Keth Empire is hereby sentenced to dissolution. Surrender immediately or face complete annihilation. The response came not from Creshmore, but from terrified civilian authorities who had watched their military forces die in the void above their world. They offered unconditional surrender and begged for mercy for their population. The Supreme Overlord's reign of terror was ending not in glorious battle, but in desperate pleas for survival. Captain Bell received orders to lead the ground assault on Cathara's capital city. His Marines had trained for months in urban warfare tactics specifically designed for this mission. They would capture the government centers and military installations that had coordinated the genocide of human colonies. The landing craft descended through Kethera's atmosphere like metallic meteors, their hulls glowing from atmospheric friction. Keth civilians fled through the streets in panic, as human soldiers established secure zones around critical facilities. The beings who had considered humans primitive vermin now cowered before Earth's military might. Creshmore made his final stand in the imperial palace that had housed Keth rulers for 15 centuries. His personal guard fought desperately to protect their leader, but human weapons and tactics proved overwhelming. Captain Bell personally led the assault that breached the palace's inner sanctum. The Supreme Overlord was captured alive, though he had expected to die fighting rather than face the humiliation of surrender. Captain Bell looked into the eyes of the being who had ordered the deaths of millions of innocent humans and felt only cold satisfaction. Justice would be served, though it could never bring back those who had died. The systematic dismantling of the Keth Empire began immediately after their government's surrender. Human forces occupied every major military installation and government facility throughout their territory. War criminals were identified and arrested for trial before galactic tribunals. Admiral Cooper established military governorships on every Keth world, with human administrators overseeing the transition from empire to occupied territory. The Keth military was completely disbanded, their weapons confiscated, and their shipyards converted to peaceful purposes under Earth's supervision. The surviving Keth population was relocated to designated worlds where they could rebuild their civilization under human oversight. Their warrior culture was systematically dismantled and replaced with educational programs that emphasized cooperation and peaceful coexistence with other species. Supreme Overlord Creshmore was put on trial before representatives from dozens of alien species who had witnessed the war's devastation. The evidence of genocide was overwhelming, and the verdict was never in doubt. He was sentenced to life imprisonment on a barren world, where he could contemplate the consequences of his choices. The galactic community watched humanity's victory with a mixture of awe and terror. The peaceful traders and explorers they had, known for centuries, had revealed themselves as the most formidable military force the galaxy had ever seen. Every species began reconsidering their relationships with Earth's expanding civilization. The Galactic Council formally recognized humanity as a major power with voting rights equal to the oldest civilizations in known space. Trade agreements were renegotiated on terms much more favorable to human interests. Diplomatic missions from dozens of worlds sought audience with President Hayes. Some alien governments privately discussed the possibility of forming defensive alliances against potential human aggression. But these conversations ended quickly, when intelligence services reminded their leaders what had happened to the last species that threatened human civilians. Captain Bell was promoted to admiral and given command of the new Frontier Defense Force, a permanent military organization dedicated to protecting human colonies from future threats. The lesson of New Eden would never be forgotten, and humanity would never again be caught unprepared for war. The memorial service for New Eden's 12 million victims was held in the ruins of Hope Valley, where families had once lived in peace before the Keth destroyed their world. Representatives from every human colony attended, along with delegations from alien species seeking to demonstrate their respect for the dead. Admiral Cooper delivered the dedication speech standing before a monument that listed every name of those who had died in the genocide. His words carried across known space through quantum relay networks, ensuring that every civilization would understand humanity's commitment to protecting innocent life. Let this monument stand as a reminder to all who would threaten those under humanity's protection. We seek peace among the stars and offer friendship to all who approach us with honest intentions, but we will never again allow genocide to go unanswered. The galaxy is vast enough for all of us, but only if we choose to coexist with respect and dignity. As the ceremony concluded, massive human fleets took up patrol positions throughout known space. The exploration vessels still carried their scientific equipment and peaceful missions, but now they traveled under the protection of the most feared military force the galaxy had ever encountered. The message had been delivered with overwhelming clarity. Humanity would defend its own with absolutely ruthless efficiency. Those who chose friendship would find Earth a generous and reliable ally. Those who chose aggression would face the same fate as the Keth Empire. In the depths of space, merchant. Vessels from dozens of species carried news of humanity's transformation throughout the galaxy. The peaceful traders were still welcome in every port, but now they came backed by the certainty that their government would extract terrible vengeance for any harm done to human citizens. The galaxy had learned its lesson. When Earth's wrath reached the stars, entire civilizations trembled.